Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'll begin in just a minute. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Today I wanted to take this moment of the suhoor reminder and use this time to remind myself first and foremost and all of us about the importance of Zakat al-Fitr, the importance of Zakat al-Fitr. Now, Zakat al-Fitr is something which Fitr comes from the same root word as iftar, which basically, means that it is the charity which is distributed at the end of the fast of Ramadan, which is, also called Eid al-Fitr, where we break the fast, where we stop fasting. So when we stop fasting at the end of Ramadan, there's a charity which we should give, which we need to give at that time, in order to make sure that. The Prophet ﷺ told us that the purpose of it is he said that the Prophet, one of the companions, he said the Prophet ﷺ made Zakat al-Fitr compulsory so that those who fasted may be purified of their idle deeds and shameful talk committed during Ramadan. Because remember, the Prophet ﷺ said that the one who does not give up food and drink, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need for him to, one who does not give idle talk and shameless talk, then Allah has no need for them to give up their food and drink. So for those people who still did it, there is still a way to make up, and that is to give Zakat al-Fitr, and it is an obligation upon every Muslim who is able to give. And then the another benefit that comes out of it is that this charity is then given to those people, so that the poor may be fed. And he said, whoever gives it before Salat al-Eid, will have it accepted as Zakat al-Fitr, as the proper obligation done, while he who gives it after the Salah has given Sadaqah. So if a person didn't give it before Salat al-Eid, they still have to give it, but they don't get the same reward, and next time they need to make sure that they do it on time. The Prophet ﷺ made Zakat al-Fitr obligatory or compulsory on every slave, free man, male, female, young, and old among the Muslims. So even a child that is, maybe just a few months old, even if a child was born on the day or the night before Eid al-Fitr, then Zakat al-Fitr needs to be given on behalf of that child as well. And it is given by the head of the household, who pays it on behalf of all of those that are under his care or her care. However, if people wanted to give it individually, if a kid said that, what, I want to give it from my own allowance, there's no problem. In fact, it's very good to teach them, to give them the opportunity to learn to give sadaqah from a young age. Uh, how is Zakat al-Fitr paid? Ideally, those who must give should look for those in need and give it to them, physically, hand to hand. And the purpose of that is that it helps a person to keep himself grounded. Many times we become so insulated from the poor in our society because we're living in a good neighborhood. We don't really see too many poor people. So we start to feel, so many times I've heard people say that, I don't know who I can give charity to because I don't know any poor people. Some people say, are there even any poor people in America? And this is so absurd. In America, if you look up statistics on hungry children, nowadays with the coronavirus, there are programs where they are still providing meals to school kids, because they found that there are certain kids that really get food in school. And when there's no school, it's very difficult for them to get food. Child poverty, child homelessness. These are real things in America, and people need to really open their eyes and go to a part of neighborhood that they normally don't go to, and just look and see the condition that people are living in. Look at the condition of the house, the condition of their furniture outside. You look at their clothes, and you will see that indeed there are poor people, and there are poor Muslims and there are poor non-Muslims. Ideally, Zakat al-Fitr should be given in one's own community, and if a person cannot find it in their own community, then they should look for Muslims in their own town. If not in their town, then in their city. Then if not in their city, then in their state. If not in their state, then in their country. And if not in their country, then the larger ummah elsewhere. Many people, they simply say, oh, I sent my Zakat al-Fitr or I sent my Zakat al-Mal back home. The Prophet ﷺ specifically said that zakah is to be taken from the rich of one community and to be given to the poor of that community. And when zakah is done right, then that is when it really has the benefits. Now, we do understand that there is a much more need in places, in refugee camps in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in poor places, Kashmir, all of these issues we understand. However, what a person should do is that uh, the hierarchy of those who deserve our zakah most are those people who are closest to us, in terms of our locality. But then even those who are our relatives, even if they're far, they have more right over that charity than even those people who are not our relatives. So the closer a person is to us in our blood relations, the more right they have of our charity. So if a person has poor relatives that are living in another country, then yes, they should send their zakat to them. However, the best solution to this is that if a person can manage they should give zakah in their own locality, and they should support their relatives elsewhere with whatever they can, so that they're not neglecting one obligation for another. We have an obligation to our own community. We also have an obligation to our relatives that may not be living in our community. So ideally, it should be done in our own locality unless we have direct relatives elsewhere. If we don't have direct relatives elsewhere, then we should give Zakat al-Fitr locally, but then send money to support the part of the Ummah that needs our help as well elsewhere in the world. We already mentioned the purpose of Zakat al-Fitr, and when is Zakat al-Fitr to be given? It must be in the hands of those in need before Eid prayer. It must be in the hands of those in need before Eid prayer. As you can see that the Prophet ﷺ commanded that it should be given before Salatul Eid. Now, this was a very simple time where the people were living in close proximity. The modern day Masjid al-Nabawi, which would take a person maybe about maybe 15 to 20 minutes to walk from one edge of it to the other edge. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that was primarily the entire city of Medina. That was primarily the entire city of Medina. So the rich are there, the poor are there, everybody is there. So it's not very difficult to go up to people and give it to them. Now the cities are much bigger, and sometimes it can be hard for a person to find someone. So what happens is that now the modern day way of giving zakat al-fitr is that most people, they give it to an organization, either it's their masjid or a charity organization. They give it to them, and that organization distributes it on their behalf to those poor people that they are well aware of and connected with. So they basically, that's how it usually works for most people. So in order for that to happen properly, people need to give it earlier. Normally, the Sahaba, they basically would give it either before Salatul Eid, the day before, or a few days before. But now, in order for proper distribution to happen a few days before Eid, whoever is distributing needs to have that money, more than a few days before Eid. So meaning that, towards the middle of Ramadan, ideally, definitely before the last 10 days, people should pay their Zakat al-Fitr, so that the organization that is distributing knows how much they have coming in for Zakat al-Fitr, so that they could distribute it in time properly. And if you're giving your Zakat al-Fitr to an organization, it is your duty to do your due diligence to make sure that your Zakat al-Fitr is being distributed on time to those who are in need, and it's not being held up. There might be organization, they might say, oh, we have already given enough Zakat al-Fitr, so we are going to just hold it until later. If you gave it to them and you did not really ask them questions, and if you did not stress upon them that, look, I'm giving it to you, but I want you to make sure that you give it out, then you have some part in that as well. Our organization, the Islamic Society of Augusta, basically gives out Zakat al-Fitr even in advance of collecting Zakat al-Fitr. And there are times where we actually give out more Zakat al-Fitr than we collect, and then the shortfall is covered by other forms of charity. But to make sure that those who are in need have the money in their hand well in advance of Eid, so if they need to go and buy food and groceries and whatnot, so they could have a good Eid day as well. Because of course we cannot wait until the last minute for people to pay. How much Zakat al-Fitr is to be paid? The Prophet ﷺ said a sa' of dried dates or a sa' of barley, which the scholars have calculated to be about 6 pounds or 3 kilograms of food. Now, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anh said that in the Prophet's time we used to give it as a sa' of food, or dried dates, barley, raisins, or dried cheese. So basically, you can see that These are categories of food. These are categories of food, the staple foods that people eat. So it is calculated, roughly speaking, right, um, to be about $10 per person. In some places you'll see $8. In some places you'll see $9. In the future, it would eventually go up to become more like $12 or $15 to basically account for how much food that money can buy. Um, it's always safer to give more than to give less. It's always safer to give more than to give less. And $10 is for now a healthy estimate that it would, mostly cover what we are trying to cover it for. Now, the question comes that can a person give Zakat al-Fitr in the form of food or money? Now, the majority of the scholars who are, who try to stay close to the exact sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ say that it has to be food. However, there are scholars who say that no, it can be whatever the people need. And think about this. In America, people who are living under the poverty line in most states can qualify for food stamps. And from what I understand, that generally speaking, one family may receive about $800 to $1,000 a month for buying food. So that in most cases, a normal average family cannot really use more food than that. So now and then the next month they will get their next installment of that same amount of money again. So generally speaking, that people even have surplus from their food stamps, and then they try to buy stuff and they try to sell it so that they could get cash from it, which they can use for other things, like other things that they need to buy clothes and buy pay bills and stuff like that. So many times you'll see people selling diapers that they bought from food stamps. They'll be selling like baby milk that they bought from food stamps, which the food stamps can only be used to buy food items. But they don't need that. They have enough of that. They need money. So scholars like Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, Sufyan al-Thawri, Hassan al-Basri, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, and Imam al-Bukhari are among those who basically say that you can give it in the form of money. You can give it in the form of money. And the evidence that they use is that Mu'adh ibn Jabal, and remember, Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anh was a companion that the Prophet ﷺ said that the most knowledgeable in the matters of halal and haram. And the Prophet sent him to Yemen to teach the people and to be a judge among them. And he asked the people to give Zakat al-Fitr in the form of cloth that they had a surplus of. Like it was common there, and other people needed clothes. So he told them to give Zakat al-Fitr in the form of this cloth, which the people could use. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said that if there is more need for money than food, then we should give the money. If there's more need for money than food, then we should give money. So I think that especially in the American context, there is more need for money than there is for food. But there might be cases where a person may need something else. Maybe somebody needs, they have trouble getting around and they need a car, for example. And if a community can help purchase a cheap car for them, something to get them around, that might be an acceptable form of Zakat al-Fitr as well. It would make their Eid very good as well. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this reminder beneficial for me and for everyone watching. Inshallah, please feel free to share this with others who may need to hear this as well. Inshallah, here at ISA, we will be, as you know, that we follow the Fiqh Council of North America, which bases Eid and Ramadan on astronomical calculations. So based on that, inshallah, Sunday, May 24th, will be Eid al-Fitr. And we are not praying Eid in the masjid or anywhere outside. Inshallah, we'll do another reminder on how to pray Eid at home with your family. Inshallah, there will be more details on that. And we ask everyone to pray at home at around 9:45, and then join us live on Zoom, where we will send the link to the community at 10 a.m. At 10 a.m. for a small, maybe no more than 10 minutes reminder on the day of Eid, which would, help us kind of feel in the spirit of Eid and not feel like, is it even Eid today? So inshallah, that will be on Sunday, May 24th at 10 a.m. inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.